Welcome one, welcome all to the very first debut of a new Aston Villa podcast, even though it's been put on YouTube as well, of Talk of the Trinity. My name's Will Forrest. I've been a Villa fan since 94, 95 when I was 8 years old. And with me, I've got co-host Baz Barrett.
Morning, afternoon, evening, depending when you're listening to it. I first started supporting Villa before football even began. So in March '92.
All right, well, I didn't even know that football existed.
I know. A lot of people don't. It's kind of, you get blank faces.
Before Sky Sports.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Though, in a symbol of some things never change. My first game was at home against QPR. QPR won.
Okay.
2-0, I think it was. And things carried on from there.
So, I mean, the saying is that you don't choose Aston Villa. Aston Villa chooses you. To know why Aston Villa choose any of us, I don't know what that answer would be. But if you did choose Aston Villa, why did you first start going down?
It was mainly because they were the closest club in terms of football. So in terms of, my family were quite sports orientated, so they'd always try and get us to various sporting events. In terms of Villa specifically, my mom's side is Birmingham, going back quite a lot of generations, and they all supported Villa. So I had a choice between my mom's side, who supported Villa, and you could have a chance of going down a game fairly regularly if you wanted to. Or my dad's side, who, I'd say even my dad's side, was mainly my dad. He supported Man United for no real reason, apart from in the 60s, they won the European Cup.
Okay.
When he was picking his team. So that was it, pretty much.
So even back then, people were glory hunting?
Yeah, pretty much. So I went with Villa. It was a good choice to begin with, because when football did begin in 92, 93, we actually had a decent season. Man United won the league, obviously. After that, let's just say Man United have had slightly more success than Villa. But I think in that circumstance, it's more a football experience for a team like Villa than Man United. I mean, their problems at the moment go, oh, we're rubbish, we haven't won the league for like 7-8 years.
Yeah.
We come like 7th or something, and it's absolutely terrible. When we're rubbish, we get relegated.
But there's a lot more highs and lows, aren't there, to supporting Aston Villa, and there's a lot more head-scratching moments when you're looking at players that they're signing, and yet Man United are shaking their head at the fact they've just spent 80 million on Harry Maguire. I don't think many United fans have, but to be able to spend that type of money on an international player is only something that we'll probably dream about as a Villa fan. Probably won't see for quite a while, if ever. I mean, I got into the Villa. It was the 28th of December 1994, and I only know that because I took my stepson down to the Norwich game for the first time, and he was 8, and that was the 26th of December, as an 8-year-old, and we beat Chelsea 3-0. Steve Staunton had a shot that got deflected in. Dwight Yorke scored, and Ian Taylor, making his home debut in front of the Holt End, scored a lovely header at the back post from a cross. I remember Ian Taylor was my favourite player. Even though I hadn't been down to a game, he was my favourite player anyway, because I'd read that we'd signed him. He made his debut in a 0-0 draw away at, I think it was Sheffield Wednesday. I know that we bought him from Wednesday.
I think he played quite well.
Yeah, and we won that match 3-0. It was great. I used to go down with my granddad, who went down for about 50 years, home and away, before he passed away last year. Went down with my mum as well, went down with a mate, Will Bagnall. And I remember we got in for free because my granddad used to sell the Villa lottery tickets.
Nice.
So I probably had about 3 or 4 seasons of getting to the Villa for free. And we started to pick up then, It was only the season before Brian Little's first full season in charge. And I remember us beating Man United 3-1 on the opening game. And a player, I don't know whether he's done much or whether he did much in his career, David Beckham, Scored against us.
No, I never heard of him. The only thing I've heard about him is whether he cooks his own Christmas dinner.
Well, I haven't heard that about him. He must have. He probably just didn't get very far in the end. Shame for the lad. But so we've got a few things that we're going to talk about. And we might as well plan this out because it might give you a decision as to whether you carry on listening or whether you decide to go and watch Hollyoaks on demand. I wouldn't blame you if you did.
Put it on in the background. I mean, you don't really need to listen to the actual dialogue.
Well,
you can have both.
Well, you put us on in the background and not listen.
Yeah.
So we're going to have a look. We're going to do a bit of a review of the Southampton at home, Norwich at home and Watford away matches. We're then going to look at the next 3 games all away. Burnley on New Year's Day, Fulham in the FA Cup and Leicester City in the Carabao Cup. Following that, we'll have a look at what needs to improve. I've said many times before, you don't change things for the sake of changing things, you change things to improve. We'll then have a little bit of a debate. It's a bit of a Twitter debate at the moment. Dean Smith in or out. We'll then move on to a couple of the links that we've had. I won't spoil that. I'll keep you intrigued so that you carry on listening. And then just to wrap things up, we'll have a look at a bit of a fantasy section. If we were the manager, you've got to sell 3 players in this window, but you can bring 5 in. Stipulation, 2 of those are on loan. But anyway, let's look at that review. So we had Southampton at home, Norwich at home, Watford away. It only seems right to start with that home clash against the Saints, Southampton. You went to that, didn't you?
Yeah, I was in Upper Holt. 3 o'clock, it was fairly optimistic in terms of Southampton are below us. They scored less than us, conceded more, I think, so far. I mean, they'd shown signs of improvement, but our home record hadn't been too bad against teams roughly around us. So there was cautious optimism, even though there was kind of a bit of agitation in the stands for reasons we'll come on to later. 3 minutes in, McGinn gets fouled, doesn't get the decision of the ref, loses his head, goes and chases after Southampton player, stupid tackle, breaks his ankle.
I remember you telling me what had happened there, and I think I'd read about it as well. And it wasn't until I watched Match of the Day, and I'm trying to watch Match of the Day this season because of the novelty of being in the Premier League and being able to watch it again with the Villa being on. And I actually sat there in my head, in my hands, going, John, what are you doing? What was the need to go full Roy Keane and try and cripple that player? It's Roy Keane, Alpha Inga Haaland, isn't he?
I suppose he is that type of player in terms of he has got fire in him and he does kind of play on the edge. So I suppose it's difficult to take it out, but in the context of that game, must win early on. Pretty stupid. And then completely threw the tactical game plan out the window, really. We bring on Marvellous, more defensively orientated player. You're not quite going to have the same attacking impetus. It just became a lot more obvious what it has been for a little while. Just get the ball to Grealish. He'll do something. We'll score. If he doesn't, we won't. And the rest of the game, we're quite slow, really, for a lot of it. The goals Southampton scored were all preventable. I think the polite word is for that one. And I think it was Ings' second one. It was just in slow motion. Like, ball over the top, beats the man. As a shot, keeper saves it, and then there's about 5 seconds where everyone else is queuing up for a half-time pie, and then he gets to put it in the net. And another example of, come on to later on, just stupid mistakes. And Southampton didn't need a second invitation.
No.
Their fans were up for it. You could see the confidence going through their players, because they're not a bad team in terms of players. They lost confidence through some early shellackings in the season.
I think you look at their midfield, and they've got a strong midfield there. Ward-Prowse obviously bleeds red and white, and you'd put him on a free kick. Højbjerg is a good strong midfielder. Nathan Redmond, how's he never in his better days, because he's not setting the world alight at the moment. How has he never had an England call up? You know, even as an ex Blue Nose, I can appreciate that he probably should have been called up for England before. But you say about the marking for the goals, and that first one, ball over the top, run, shot, and yeah, Matty Target. It's like he's there going, I used to play for these. I'll let Danny Ings in, but he doesn't try to tackle Ings until Ings is wheeling off celebrating. The second one, Stevens gets in front of his man.
I think that summed it up, really. I mean, Southampton have been time wasting for pretty much most of the game, even when it was 0-0. That only increased after they scored.
Yeah.
There'd been about 3 minutes between the corner being given and him taking the corner, because from recollection, I think there'd been an injury and then they'd kind of been slowly walking the ball over. So they've had all day to line up defensively. And he's just stood in front of his man and then from 6 yards out, straight in. I mean, it's just poor defensively.
And then that third goal, I mean, the ball, crossfield ball, and it lands to the feet of Redmond. And Gilbert is nowhere near him. I like Gilbert a lot. I think he will become a very good player for us. I think he's one of our better performers anyway. But he was nowhere near him, and he was at fault for that. And it does seem, and it's something that we'll come on to later, he's been made a bit of a scapegoat because of that. You know, he got dropped for the next 2 matches and El Mohammedi's come in, whereas Gilbert is better defensively and all round than El Mohammedi, at least in my opinion.
I'd agree with you, to be honest. I'd rather have Gilbert in the team than El Mahdi.
Yeah, I mean, and then we finish up with Jack Grealish scoring a wonder goal, and not for the first time this season, he scored a very good goal, and we just couldn't capitalise on it.
No, it was a situation where they got booed off at half time, booed off at full time, but there was a bit of split personality because they were being booed off at the same time that Grealish was being applauded off, which I don't like. One side of the face is booing, the other's applauding. I think there was a realisation from the whole end that it's Grealish or nothing, and even when he plays quite well, scores a good goal, needs the rest of the team to kind of step up, really.
Oh, definitely. I mean, you moved that onto the Norwich game, and there's what seems to be a change in formation. From where I was sat, it looked like it was a 4-2-3-1. So they brought in Douglas Luiz and Nakamba as the two holding or central midfielders. And I can understand that. If Smith's trying to emulate Mourinho there, Mourinho's gone for Dyer and another more defensive-minded midfielder, or, you know, Don Bailey, who he wants to be a bit more defensive-minded. So he's got 6 defensive-minded players there, and then he says to his front four, you go and do the damage, you go and attack. So that's what he seemed to do with us. He brought the 2 wingers in, and it was like, great, it's not El Ghazi or Trezeguet this week, it's both of them. Grealish in the middle, who you're hoping is playing a free role, and Big Wes up top, who you're thinking, well, with those wingers and with Grealish just behind him, it's only a matter of time before he scores today.
Yeah, I think the setup was designed to be quite solid. I suppose you've got to ask questions about you're at home to the team who are bottom and you're thinking about having to be defensively set up.
Yeah.
What does that say about your own team? But football is a results-driven business, as they say, and got the win. Hourihane loves scoring against Norwich.
Yeah, he does, doesn't he? I mean, for me, it was not a very good Aston Villa performance at all. And anybody who went to the game will say the same. I don't think there've been many people who went down there and went, oh, we were Boston, mate. We weren't. Norwich should have won 4-1. Sam Byram had a chance or two. We had the Douglas Luiz clearance off the line, which was celebrated like it was a goal. Tom Heaton made one magnificent save at the foot of his left-hand post from a corner, and then he made that other save, which he knew nothing about, where it hit him on the chest and flew out, and I think Courtney House was first to react, if I remember rightly. but we didn't look menacing. We didn't look like we were going to score. House and Konsa both had very good games in defence. I was surprised that those two played as well as they did with one another. I thought that one might be a weaker link, but they both played very well. Target, for me, isn't up to it. Elmo isn't either. He was decent, but didn't really do a fat lot. Nakamba was poor. Luis, I like Douglas Luis. I think holding midfield, he doesn't want to play that role. He wants to be a central midfielder, not necessarily box to box, someone in the centre of the park. And he did a good job. Harahan, come on, scored a goal. That's all he needed to do. The wingers were ineffective. Wesley did a lot of running. There was one bit at the end though where he sort of gave up his running, and the fans got on his back a bit. But he was probably tired, and Smith could have brought on Codger. He was probably there thinking, no, let's keep Big Wes on because he can hold up the ball. And then Jack Grealish, like you've said, you give him the ball and we will score, or that's what you hope, is there. He ran at the Norwich players, drew them in, got fouled as he knocked the ball to Harahan, had that awareness to pass to him, and then from there, Harahan smacks it into the back of the net. But it was Grealish. He was the one who lit a fire underneath us. I mean, there's people on Twitter moaning about Grealish or having the opinion that he shouldn't have been shouting at other players when they weren't working hard enough or they weren't passing. But I'm one of them in a way of I like my players to be positive, but when you're 1-0 up at home against a team who are all over us and you're desperate for 3 points and there's others who aren't pulling their weight or don't seem that bothered, you've got to give him a rollicking. And fair play to him for having the guts to turn around to his teammates in a full house and say, you're not performing well enough. Get up to my standard. This is my club. If you want to be here, you've got to put in 100%.
Yeah, I mean, he's the best player. He's captain.
Yep.
Most of the positive stuff about the team goes through him.
Mm-hmm.
He's beginning to add assists and goals to his game, which was kind of one of the criticisms of him previously.
Yep.
I don't think anyone was saying to Roy Keane that he couldn't shout at people when he was captain. I mean, if you're leading from the front and you're the one who's doing all the work, then think and shout who you like.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the reason. Grealish is our danger man. He scored that wonder goal against Man United. He scored a lovely goal against Leicester as well. As you say, he's adding goals to his games. But you've got to have him in the centre. You've got to play him in that free role. Dean Smith said last season, I want Jack Grealish to be as high up the pitch as possible, behind Tammy Abraham. I don't want him dropping deep to get the ball because he damages teams, he hurts teams. So why this season is he being put out on the left? Why is he being played in that number 8 role where he can drop deep and get the ball? Where, to be fair to Jack, he made the mistake against Tottenham where he dilly-dallied on the ball for a little while. And in other games where he's getting it that deep, he's got to start moves from there. He's gonna have people on him a lot quicker than if he's higher up the pitch.
I think the thing why Grealish hasn't played there is because players who've been brought in to play on the wing largely haven't been consistent enough to justify a nailed on starting place.
Yeah.
But the Norwich game didn't play very well.
Nope.
Won. That's usually the type of result where you go, oh, we turned in a corner, we ground out a result.
Yep.
All the best teams we win are not playing very well. Let's bring on Watford. What could possibly go wrong?
Troy Deeney.
Yeah. It is a bit like Agbonlahor used to score against Blues.
Yeah.
Pretty much most games. Same with Deeney. I mean, he absolutely loves it, doesn't he? And to be fair to him, don't blame him. I mean, you score against your rivals in terms of the team you support.
Yeah.
You're probably getting absolutely rickets worth of abuse pretty much every game you play.
I mean, you look at that Watford team, they've got the new manager Banks, they beat Man United at home. they got a good result against Sheffield United, who are having an amazing season, and then they come and beat us 3-0. Well, they're going to be up for it anyway. And you look at their players on paper, and this is just my opinion, it's not both of our opinions. Ben Foster, I think, is one of the most underrated goalkeepers that there has been for England in the last 10 years. I think he deserved more when Joe Hart was in goal and not playing so well. You know, he deserved more of a chance. You've got people like Doucouré, Capoue, De La Feu. Deeney's half decent. He knows where the back of the net is. You've got a set piece, you put him on him, and then you've got Gray as well, who isn't even getting a look in. I don't know whether he's injured at the moment, but they've got the nucleus of a good team there on paper. So they were always going to be up for playing an out of sorts Aston Villa team.
I think in terms of the proverbial team on paper exercise, you probably wouldn't put Watford bottom three.
No.
In terms of quality. I mean, I'd probably put them bottom half, to be honest, but I wouldn't have expected their season to have gone quite as bad. I wouldn't have expected their season to have gone quite as bad as it did until they got Pearson in. But football's a tactical game. There's more awareness nowadays of beyond what you see with your eyes. You know, you kind of got XG, you kind of got pass completions, you kind of got all that. But some of the basics, I think, of football remain. And if you're playing a team who are down to 10 men, you cannot then go and lose 3-0 when you're only 1-0 and be absolutely carved apart as well. I mean, that second goal, all this talk about, we should put the ball out, Watford when they attacked. Nah. I mean, we had the ball and we carried on and we lost it.
You're not going to put the ball out in this day and age unless the referee makes you. You're going to take the most of that advantage.
That wasn't even the worst bit.
It wasn't even a penalty. It wasn't a penalty.
I think it was. I think that encapsulates Douglas Luiz perfectly. He was caught ball watching for the ball through. It was about 3, 4, 5 yards behind. I know Dean isn't the quickest, but he makes up the ground well. So you think, okay, he's rectified his error. And he just goes and shoulders him in the back. I mean, he makes too many stupid mistakes like that, Luiz. I think he's of the feeling. He doesn't really want to go backwards. He only wants to go forwards. And so when he's around there, I mean, talks about Grealish's mistake against Spurs early on in the season. I remember Luiz against Bournemouth, a stupid pass across the centre midfield. And,
we've done with it.
Yeah, and you kind of think, okay, he's naturally a very good player in terms of technical ability. And you kind of think, okay, maybe if the team's doing okay, you can kind of indulge that. But if you're struggling near the bottom, in a high-stakes game such as that, and you're losing, and you just go and shoulder someone in the back, ridiculous. I mean, I can't...
I suppose you're right in the way that if that happened to Jack Grealish, I'd be shouting for a penalty. My stepdaughter, who's a rugby fan, well, says she was a rugby fan, doesn't like football because of the divers and all of that, came down to the match and she went, Grealish gets fouled a lot, doesn't he? She went, he's on the floor a lot as well. She wants to come back, which is great. But I said to her, I went, look, if you're running at a certain speed, in a certain direction, and you're light on your feet and you're half expecting somebody's going to come in and nudge you, you're going to go down. You can't always help it, but you are, especially if you're running fast in a certain direction and someone comes into you, you're going to go down. It's a free kick then. If there's contact there, doesn't matter really how minimal it is, it's a foul. So I suppose, you're right there.
I suppose Grealish going down summed up for the third goal.
Well,
whether that was a foul or not. 50-50 really. I think regardless whether it is a foul or not, you can't just have your defence completely parted open like it was. I suppose we'll maybe throw men forward to try and get back in the game, but it was pretty poor to have one pass and then you've got someone able to run in unopposed to your 6-yard box pretty much and put it in.
Lovely finish.
It was a great finish, to be fair. He's a good player. I mean, he's kind of struggled from a Watford perspective to get in the team through injuries and such things, but unfortunately he started picking up in recent games.
So, okay then, look, those last 3 games were the must-win games, and I mean, looking at it really, They were must-win games. They would have done a lot for us. We're only 1 point outside the relegation zone. If we'd have capitalised and beaten Southampton and beaten Watford, we'd have been 5 points clear, which would have been a lot nicer, and we could sleep better at night. But looking at these next 3 games, and we've got Burnley away in the league, and then we've got 2 cup games, which helps take the pressure off a little bit, if you like. With Fulham away and then Leicester away in that semi-final. How do you see these games going?
Burnley, I think we'll lose. Is the short of it. I was there when we played them earlier on in the season at Villa Park. Burnley were useless for most of that game. But 2 goals, 2 crosses. Neil Taylor was playing left back that day and was just absolutely clueless. They have their system in place. Burnley, they have their strengths. They play to them. They don't try and do much else. They have a tactical identity, whether you agree with it or not. Teams like Villa haven't got a tactical identity, I don't think, yet. They're still searching for theirs. And you're going against a well-oiled machine. In terms of ability, Burnley, you could make an argument that Watford are better than them, individually, player for player.
Yeah.
But they've been able to work out the system that works for them. They've had longevity with the management and gradual recruitment. And New Year's Day, fans are always up for it. The only thing possibly that may run in our favour is a 12:30, so the atmosphere might be slightly down after a few too many drinks on New Year's Eve. But
see, I look at the Burnley team, and you're right. You've got Woods and Barnes up top, and you know that it's going to be big balls into them. They've got Gunnarsson, who's not bad. Dwight O'Neill tries to play some football, and he's highly rated at the moment. Tarkowski, not a bad defender. You've got Pope as well, very good goalkeeper. The 2 players who have shone for them, and it's a shame. I loved both of them when they were with us. Ashley Westwood, who cleaned up with awards last season for Burnley, and Matt Loughton. They're both playing well, and they're the sort of players with that Premier League experience now who would potentially improve our teams. I mean, Loughton, Gilbert, there's an argument there, but you could put either of them at left back. Ashley Westwood in that holding midfield, just knocking the ball around, keeping it going, passing it. Yes, he's not going to put a slide tackle in. He's not going to get his shorts dirty. But he'd have added some experience and a calmness about us that might have seen us through a couple of games.
I suppose the question is, would you rather have him than Douglas Luiz in your centre midfield?
I think they're both different players, but you know, I'd say it was more between him and Nakamba, if I'm honest with you. But yeah, I mean, Burnley, I'd like to think that we can nick a draw against Burnley if Jack is back in the centre. And I also wonder if Mings is back, because he's in training and in contention, and Keenan Davis is in contention. Will they make a difference? There's no leaders on the pitch at the moment. Tom Heaton's got Premier League experience. Jack Grealish is a leader in the way in which he plays, and he moaned at those players. You put Mings in, who's not afraid to give somebody a rollicking. That might help. Maybe it's time as well to unleash James Chester again and give him some game time. I'd rather him play in the league 1 match and then miss the next 2 matches in the cup than give him a run out against Fulham or Leicester to see how his fitness is.
I suppose that's the question with Chester. Fitness, isn't it? About whether he is able to get through high intensity Premier League game at this stage. If he is, then you'd have to hope that he's going to be more consistent at the back in terms of players who we got there who are decent players but just keep making the same stupid mistakes.
Yeah. I mean, if you potentially look at a change of formation to a 5-3-2 or 3-5-2, whichever you look at it nowadays, if you had Mings in there on that left side, you put Chester in there on that right side, and then you put Engels in the centre for his height, or you put Konsa on the right side and Chester in the middle, then I think you can afford to play him for definite. I'd risk him anyway. With Gilbert, who's quick enough to get back, and with a holding midfielder, if we're going to go for that 4-3-3 or 4-2-3-1, I'd give Chester a go. He's another leader on the pitch.
Further up the field, I think I'd play Codger.
Yes. Wow. Is Codger not playing because he's on his way?
I suppose that's the question behind the scenes, isn't it? You can only think that the manager doesn't fancy him, because otherwise you would naturally assume he would have had more game time.
Well, he never really had a chance last year, did he, with Abraham and the year before he was injured quite a bit. The thing, I feel sorry for Kodge, because he was obviously sensational in that first season, picked up that injury, and it felt like Steve Bruce brought him back too soon, and that's why he broke down again with the same sort of injury. But where'd you play him? Do you play him as the striker, or do you play him on the left?
Play him on the left. I think the thing with Codger, which was probably summed up quite well when we beat Liverpool under 8s in the Cup a couple of weeks ago, he pretty much did nothing.
Yeah.
But he scored 2 goals. And I suppose the question is, do you want someone who's going to do nothing? I mean, not even attempt to run most of the time. I mean, see the ball's going over, he's just looking over his shoulder like there's a piece of litter blown across the field. but he knows where the goal is. Whether
for sale sandwiches.
Yeah, I mean, they're still being searched for. Whether you can get away with that on the left wing,
yeah,
I can see why you might not play him there. But I think we're in a situation whereby, do I think he's Premier League quality? Probably not, if I'm being honest. But at the moment, neither are we. So we've got, in the attacking areas, a inconsistent squad. So for the sake of trying something a bit different when we're in a bit of a poor run of form, I'd give him a game, see where he is. And I suppose it's the same issue with Chester about, would you play him in a league game or would you play him in a cup game? I think I'd play Codger in the league.
See, the thing with Codger, if I'm playing him, I'm playing him up front. I'd potentially play him up front with Wesley or with Davies and have them do the work that Codger doesn't want to do, so that he can get the glory of running onto those balls and firing home. I think that he, in the right setup, with the right players around him, he's getting 10 goals in the Premier League, personally. Having him on the left wing, however, you lead more and lean more to having Courtney Hawes or Neil Taylor as your left back, because they will defend. You can't have Target there who's going to bomb forward, and then you've got Codger who's not going to track back, and you're leaving that left-hand side open. Mings or whoever is coming across, leaving a gap in the middle because Nakamba and Louise aren't necessarily getting back, and Bob's your uncle, Sue's your aunt. Yeah, you're letting a goal in, or you're letting chances go.
I probably would play Hawes at left back, to be honest. Above Taylor, most definitely.
I think Hawes he's got a great range of passing. When you look at the highlight videos of him, but I mean, seeing him in person as well as that, he's got a lovely range of passing. He knows how to switch it. He's comfortable on the ball. He's not the fastest of players. He's rather slow, but he's comfortable, and he's what we need at the moment on the pitch.
I think the thing which sways me towards why I'd play Codger left wing and keep Wesley up front is, unless we bring somebody in who's going to score goals, which is a big if that we'll touch upon later. If Wesley doesn't start scoring, we will go down. So I think having them both in the team is, at least with the current players we've got, is probably going to be the best chance of building Wesley's confidence up. If he gets dropped, I think his head's gone. New to the English league, and shock horror, somebody who's new to English football isn't brilliant every single game early on. I mean, I'm not saying he's Christian Benteke, but Benteke wasn't much good in the first half a season. Then he
got 4 or 5, didn't he? Same as Wesley.
Yeah, I mean, they're different players, so I mean, it's a bit of a slightly lazy comparison to make, but dropping him isn't going to help the team when at the moment we've got 3 centre forwards at the moment.
Yeah.
Davis, who doesn't strike me as the type of player who's going to bang in like
No.
10, 15 goals. Kodjuru might, but probably isn't of sufficient quality to lead the line up front on his own, I don't think. So hopefully getting some sort of partnership between them two, then you be able to put Grealish in the hole, who is our best player comfortably and is up for the fight. And then at least it only leaves one spot on the other wing where you can rotate inconsistent wingers. I mean, tactically it is a gamble because, as you said, it does leave us potentially wide open at the back, and defensively we're not massively solid as it is. But
no, we're not.
I think a positive statement of intent in a game where a point's a good result.
Definitely.
And it is a situation whereby we're only 1 point behind 17th, and before the start of the season, I think most sensible Villa fans would have taken 17th.
Well, you're actually bringing up something I saw on Twitter from a Villa fan, and he'd said, if you'd have said to me a year ago that we would spend 22 million on a striker and a defender, breaking our transfer records really, we'd have a goalkeeper like Tom Heaton in goal, Mings would join, Grealish would be on the cusp of the England squad and Mings would be in it, we would finish 5th in the Championship and still get promoted, get to the semi-final of the League Cup, and on New Year's Day, at the start of New Year's Day, be 1 point off the team who are 4th from bottom. We're 3rd from bottom, but 1 point off the team 4th from bottom. Would you take it? Most people would.
Yeah, I mean, I'll touch upon it a bit later in the show, but we have gone a lot further in advance of the plan, as it were, than what was originally anticipated. And it is a case of managing expectations. It's also a case of trying to build an aeroplane whilst you're flying it, really.
Yeah.
Which I'll, touch upon when we move on. But league game, Burnley, a point's a great result if we get it. If we can show some tactical flexibility, might be able to shock Burnley, because we know how Burnley are going to play. They're going to be solid. I think we're going to need a little bit of something different. Konsa, I mean, you may be different in a bad way.
Yeah.
Try something. We've got a break after that for the cup games where we can maybe get some rotation, maybe get some transfers that we'll come on to. But moving on to the cup game, Fulham away.
I worry about Fulham away. I think if they beat us, it's a massive dent to our confidence. And I wonder how the team react to that. I mean, in all fairness, we played 20 games and we've won 5 of those games. Yes, we've lost 12, which isn't very good. So we've drawn 3. We need to get more draws and wins, obviously wins. But a defeat to a Championship Fulham side, I worry would knock the confidence of already fragile players. Leicester, I'll talk about the two together. Leicester, I don't think it does so much. It's great to be in the semi-final. It would be great to get to the final. But I think in terms of confidence, the Fulham game is a must-win for me in terms of confidence. Obviously, in the grand scheme of the season, it isn't. Burnley's a lot more of a must-win. But you don't want to go to Craven Cottage, get turned over, and have the fans on your back more. And generally have lost to a Championship side.
I think the thing with a Fulham away game is that 10 years ago, that game would have been 12:30 kick-off on the BBC, because they would have picked it going, there's a cup set on the mark here. Team who are doing well in the Championship against a team not doing very well in the Premier League, who could potentially keep swapping over a 3-season period. I think it largely depends upon, and this is an absolutely shocking development, it depends what team we play and depends what team Fulham play. In terms of, if we play our cup team, which arguably has probably played slightly better than our first team, although we've played an under-8s team, an under-12s team, an under-17s team in Brighton. Whether you stick with that, when you can see the gulf between the two teams, really in terms of quality. Landry's played in the cup team. He's had some nice passes. I mean, his assist for the opening goal against Wolves in the cup was a nice slide rule pass.
Yeah.
Plays against Watford in the Premier League. I thought he was useless. So there's a gap between the two teams, and
Definitely.
and funny enough, you won't know this in advance unless you're Marco Bielsa and you got some spies on the go. Are Fulham going to go for it, or are they going to be focusing on the league, whereby at the moment the top two in the Championship are comfortably ahead of the top two. The top two in the Championship are comfortably ahead of the other teams in the promotion battle, the playoffs. So are they going to be thinking, we're probably not going up automatic, we need to establish our place in the playoffs, where it's quite tight. Do we kind of throw the cup? Or, in the converse of Villa, do they go, beating a Premier League team at home is really going to get our confidence going for the second half of the season?
If I'm Scott Parker, I'm thinking we go there, we beat Villa, and we do what we did the last time we got promoted to the Premier League by going on an amazing unbeaten run and eventually come across Birmingham City, who will beat us because, like Aston Villa, if you're a team who have won loads and loads of games on the trot, you don't want to come and play either a sort of blues. That's the only nice thing I'm going to say about them. But yeah, I worry about Fulham. I worry about whoever our centre-back partnership is, if it's not Mings, against Mitrovic.
Yep.
I think he's so confident. 25 goals in 27 games or something like that. He's got 11. He got 11 in the Premier League last year. He's going to be up for this game. He's potentially looking to secure a move away. If a Premier League team comes in for him and they're not troubled by relegation, Mitrovic is going to go, in my opinion. I don't think he's going to stick around. So I think they're going to be up for it. And then Leicester, I think Leicester are potentially going to have the cup semi-final over and done with after that first match.
Yeah, I can see us getting banged.
Yeah.
Quite comfortably by Leicester. I mean, the only hope for that two-legged affair is we keep it within one or two for the second leg. And hopefully the home leg won't be like the league game. I mean, funny enough, we played Leicester in a League Cup semi-final round about the turn of the century, and I didn't remember it.
I remember we had one where we drew 0-0, and then we played them again, and Matt Elliott, I'm sure it was, scored the only goal. He was a centre-back who had shove up front every now and again, and Martin O'Neill, that'd be before the turn of the century. I do remember going to the King Power Stadium and us beating them 3-2. And I think Gabby scored right at the very end of the game, because I went to that. I remember being at the ground and thinking, well, this is just a bowl.
Yeah, it's very much of a muchness, I suppose, in terms of modern stadiums. But can't say that there, otherwise you'll get mauled by them foxes.
Okay, well, we're obviously not very optimistic about those games, and I don't think we'll be in the FA Cup. The Leicester game will be just a game, a statistic in history, and Burnley, hopefully we get a point if we can mix it up and we can press them. So what needs to, we sort of talked about it already, what needs to improve for that Burnley game?
Defensive solidarity, which has been elusive all season. The amount of clean sheets that we've kept hasn't been good enough, especially away from home, where we've won one game.
Yeah.
And I think we've got one draw against Man United, and we've lost every other game away.
Yep.
And that does put all the pressure on the home form, which, as shown by the Southampton game, it leaves you less margin for error. Puts the crowd more on edge because they've seen you get shellacked away the previous week. And we touched upon it earlier, it is a question of, is it Mings getting back into that defence after injury? Is it Chester? He didn't really play much in the promotion campaign through injury.
No, not from January today.
But I think it's a situation whereby getting that balance between defensive solidarity, which in the home game against Norwich really favoured that over attacking, really ground out the result. Whether you can do that away from home, where you've got a record of losing the most points from winning positions. But earlier on in the season, I suppose if you're a glass half full kind of person, at least we're getting into those winning positions, which doesn't appear to be happening now. I think in terms of what needs to improve, need to try and find a way to take the load off Grealish, because through December it's become increasingly, I would say if he doesn't score then we don't do anything, but it's even turned into a situation whereby he still scores and we still lose because we're not doing enough at the other end. It's centre-back partnership, need to get one established. I mean, we started off the season relatively well in that department. Engels and Mings. Engels took everybody by surprise, I think, in terms of how well he's adapted to English football. Then, even though we weren't keeping a huge amount of clean sheets, they still looked like something to build a solid-ish defensive kind of platform. Heaton in goal, who's played well, I think, for most of the season. Gilbert, who I think is probably our best right-back. I'd play him ahead of Alamardi. Left-back's dicey. We'll come on later to what potentially we can do about that. But there's still ingredients there to have something fairly consistent if you can just kind of get it on the training field. And I think we'll touch upon it a little later. Dean Smith teams are quite streaky in terms of they either go on a massive winning run or massive losing run.
See, the one thing I think that we need to be doing again is going back to the press. The press that we were doing. We're doing that high press when we were in the Championship. And because of that, we were getting results. We're putting teams under pressure. If you go and do a high press on Burnley, for example, and they're not expecting it, you go and, we know full well, you go and press Ashley Westwood, he's going to start making mistakes, or he's only going to start passing to the sides of him. If we can get that established centre-back pairing of Engels and Mings, or Chester and Mings, or Konsa and Mings, and obviously the key word there was Mings, because he's been the one who I think has given a lot of confidence to everybody else. I think he's been a lot more of a linchpin for the team than maybe we realised. But everybody who's played alongside him when he has been fit has done well. Engels came in and played alongside Konsa against Leicester when he came on and didn't look so good. You know, Konsa and House played very well together against Norwich, but on the same token, we do seem to look better when we've got Tyrone Mings in defence.
Which is quite funny in a way, because he hasn't really played centre-back very much, relatively speaking, in terms of his career, but that demonstrates what he adds to the team in terms of gravitas and such things.
Yeah.
In terms of forward movement, you touched upon it in terms of the high press. It was especially noticeable against Southampton. We were just too slow. It was a bit like Lambert at his worst, where sideways, waiting for a gap that would never come. Poof, lose it. I mean, it wasn't quite as bad as those dark days. But it's not a scenario whereby we've got loads of slow players. We have got pace in there. It's just finding a way of utilising it. And I suppose that goes to a confidence thing. If you're struggling, the crowd's on your back a bit, you're not going to maybe take that chance, maybe make that run. And Burnley away, I suppose, is a good opportunity away from the Bear Pit.
Yeah.
On Villa Park, hopefully try and get something going, which is why I'd probably go more attacking.
I mean, looking at that and looking at the changes, there's one drastic change that is starting to get calls for at the moment. You hear it in conversations between Villa fans, you see it on Twitter, you see it on Facebook in the comments, and it's not everyone. I think it's a smaller majority of fan, but people are starting to hashtag Smith out. Is that the right decision? Do you get rid of Dean Smith now, or do you keep him? I mean, if we went down, would you keep him in the hope that he brings us back up, or would you sack him then? Do you give him another window to really bring in players that he wants. And if you were going to get rid of him, who is there? Who is there that can come in and do a better job than Dean Smith can do at the moment at Aston Villa? I mean, I've seen people say Allardyce. Allardyce will keep you up, but I wouldn't want him at our club. Apart from that, you're not really going to draw Eddie Howe or anybody like that to the club. Pochettino isn't going to be making his way down to Aston to become the manager, as I've seen people saying we should bring him in. And apart from him, I can't really think of many other managers who are out of business at the moment that could come in and take over. And I'll be honest with you, I'd have faith in Dean Smith. I think he will turn it round. I think he will. He is looking at those changes. He just needs the players to start performing on the pitch and the players to start caring as much as Jack Grealish. So the return of Tyrone Mings and eventually of John McGinn won't come soon enough for him.
Purely football reasons, I'd keep him. Because, touched upon earlier, we're ahead of the game in terms of the plan, as it were.
Yeah.
We got promoted ahead of schedule, really. We were rubbish for most of last season, frankly, until the end of February. I remember some truly awful games. West Brom at home, lost 2-0. Useless.
Oh, that was some awful, some dark days.
And then we went on an absolutely amazing run, one of Smith's kind of streaky runs. 10 in a row, got in the playoffs. Funny enough, against West Brom, we were useless again for pretty much most of the two legs. Managed to scrape it home on penalties. Best team in the playoff final, although that was a combination of Derby didn't turn up, I don't think. Last 10 minutes when they did decide to have a go, we looked a bit shaky, but you take promotion wherever you can, even if it's slightly ahead of the schedule. And you don't get it very much in modern football, really. The kind of the trinity of the manager who supports the club, the captain who supports the club, and the fan base. In terms of that game period in the Championship where we went on the run, really kind of building together. I mean, probably this time last year, I mean, there's financial reasons as well. Upper Trinity's not open. Not needing it to be open because you're not feeling the reduced capacity. Not getting over 30,000 for games. Fast forward a real kind of streak at the end of the season. You've got records, season ticket sales. You've had to cap them. You've got sellouts pretty much every week at home.
Transfer, new records.
Yeah, and I think that is partly because of all that kind of being connected. And I think to throw it away after half a season whereby, we haven't played very well in quite a few games and we've kind of been exposed for lack of quality, really. But we had to build a new team, really, after promotion. We're not in the same area of the supermarket as established Premier League teams. I mean, can touch upon it in terms of transfers in a bit, but players who Dean Smith probably would have wanted to buy were probably double the price because they were players who he played with and they had the English tax. And so we've had to have a few situations whereby we've taken scouting reports on board, kind of, and we talked about Engels. He's been a good signing. Nakamba's been decent. So
for the most part, definitely.
Yeah, and so I think in terms of that kind of long-term project, it doesn't work without Dean Smith. And you could bring somebody in, as you said, Allardyce, and maybe you'd stay up, and probably Chris Samba would come back and we'd play him up front and in defence at the same time. But it would be a situation whereby that bond would be gone, I think. I mean, it'd still be Villa, but I think one of the reasons why there was that kind of groundswell of optimism kind of in the second half, not in the second half of last season, from March onwards, and in the summer where expectations were raised, it's because everything was on the same page, and we've had some troubles this season. Dean Smith's never managed in the Premier League before, so I don't think he's sitting in the training ground with his flipboard just writing on a piece of paper over and over again 4-4-2 or something. So they're learning, players are learning. I think even if we go down, I'd keep him.
Yeah.
The big issue is going to be whether, and we don't know, the financial stuff is true, whether we are in trouble with financial fair play, and if we go down, it'd be an absolute catastrophe in terms of fines and losing points and all that. Because if that is the scenario, and to use the plane analogy, it'll explode if we get relegated. Maybe you do have to get rid of him, but that's not footballing reasons. That's purely finance, and that's a situation you don't want to be in. We've been there before in the last couple of years where we've gambled the house.
Yeah.
You've got to hope that the new ownership hasn't put us in that position. But that's the only reason I'd get rid of him, if we need it for the financial viability of the club.
I mean, like you say, there's a lot of positives there from Smith coming in. I mean, the fact he brought the fans and the club back together. He brought the fans and the players back together. He buoyed us. He got us up higher. He got us up before he should have got us up, really. I mean, you want to come up every season anyway, but in regards to the long-term plan and future of the club and whatnot, he got us up quicker than he was meant to. He got players to want to play for the Villa, to want to come and join. Tyrone Mings, he got him to come and play, put him in a new position, said to him, I believe in you as a centre-back, come play for the Villa. And then you've got Tyrone Mings, a day after we come up, who's standing outside Bournemouth train station, still in his Villa kit, basically liking a load of Instagram messages about him signing and joining the club.
Also because National Rail's rubbish, and he'd been waiting like 2 days to try and get a trip home.
And then the other thing where you mentioned that great run that we had, the one thing that just encapsulates even more is the fact that Jack Grealish is our key man, and we need Jack Grealish on form, firing on all cylinders to really stand us in with any chance, because it was him returning, scoring that wonder volley against Derby that started it all off. I'm not saying it was that goal and then suddenly it was like, wow, Jack scored that goal, we're going to win 10 games. But remember the one turning point in particular, remember his goal against Rotherham? Down to 10 men already because of Mings being sent off. And he picks up the ball in his own half, plays a couple of 1-2s, goes past players, has the presence of mind to check his run, to receive a pass back from El Mohammadi, and then just strokes that ball home like a snooker player pot in the black.
That was a great goal.
He was fantastic. So yeah, I'd keep Smith. I wouldn't get rid of him at all, unless, as you say, for financial fair play reasons, you have to get rid of him because he's on £86 million a month, which he obviously isn't.
No, in terms of the players, he's going to be a fire sale. And then if we are in that situation, then you're not going to get Pochettino in.
No,
if we haven't got the money. And realistically, you're not going to get Pochettino in. I mean, you're looking in terms of other clubs in and around there, in the bottom, who've changed managers this season. You've got Watford, who've changed twice, and brought Pearson in. Pearson, he's done a good job. He's really put a bit of belief back in the club. Would I have him at Villa? Not a chance. West Ham, David Moyes, really? I mean, I think you'd very rarely find a scenario whereby you have a manager at a club, there's fans storming the pitch, quite literally, at West Ham, when Moyes was in there last time. They stay up somehow. They got rid of him because they thought, nah, not for us. We want a new kind of direction. He hasn't had another job since. So he hasn't rehabilitated his reputation. And then he's back at the same club. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. Would I have Moyes at Villa? Not now. I would have done maybe 5 years ago, around about the time Bruce was linked, for example. Would I have him now? No. So then you're kind of left with, you mentioned your Pochettino's, Pellegrini, They're not really kind of managers who you pick for a relegation fight. Allardyce wouldn't want him.
Yeah.
So in terms of, it's a very unpopular kind of position to be in, and it does entirely depend upon whether we can keep a lot of players or we're in a position to kind of replace ones who we've got to sell if we get relegated. But providing the club won't go to the wall if we get relegated, I'd keep him.
I mean, if it was financial fair play, the natural predecessor anyway would be John Terry.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair,
potentially the same style of play.
Yeah, and if it gets too bad in terms of having to lose players, I'm sure he's got his tracksuit on. I mean, you can unleash the kit and
put him in defence with Tyrone Mings for the next couple of games. All right, well, I mean, there's been a couple of links. We can just do a yes or no here for these, as in, would you have them or would you not have them in the current situation that we're in at the moment? 4 players who I can think of that we've been linked with. Would you take, at this moment in time, Jared Bowen from Hull City?
I would. My only slight qualification would be, do you want to throw him into a relegation fight? That's the only slight hesitancy I would have. But he's done a great job in the last couple of seasons at Hull, who haven't particularly done a lot in terms of challenging for the playoffs, for example.
Yeah.
So that's a situation whereby, even if it maybe not quite the ideal kind of breeding ground for him, bring him in if the price is right.
I would bring him in just to the fact that it'd be cheap as chips and you're not worrying about battling anybody else. If you can just get him in now, he's got family who support Aston Villa as well, his grandfather. Get him in, give him some Premier League exposure this season. What have we got to lose? We've already brought in players without Premier League experience on the wings. Put him in, he knows the English game, ahead of Trezeguet, ahead of El Ghazi, who's very hot and cold, and hope that he transfers some of that form to us. And of course, he knows where the back of the net is at Villa Park.
Yeah. He's earned his chance in the Premier League, and I think it would potentially be a good fit.
What about Vida, this Croatian defender who's a captain in Turkey? I think it's Besiktas. Is that, or it was that Besiktas? Do you bring him in?
In terms of the defence, left back is the problem area.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you want to throw somebody with a lack of experience in the English league into a relegation dogfight, that's my only slight concern. If it was a situation whereby, I think we've been quoted like 6 million or something like that.
Yeah.
I think for that type of money, it'd be worth taking the punt. It would be a situation whereby if we could get somebody else in on loan who could play left back with a bit more experience of top flight as well, maybe complement them too. But it'd be a hesitant yes.
For me, it's a no. And I'm going to contradict myself in a minute. Premier League experience. We need the experience of the Premier League. Players knowing the league, knowing what it takes. So that's why I'll go with a no. I think you've also got James Chester. There, start playing him more if you have to, and play people alongside Mings. Give Mings 3 days off in the week if you want to make sure he doesn't get injured. You know. So after him, and a link that goes back to the summer, Morales of Rangers.
No, I wouldn't have him.
No?
No. I think that temperament is not what we need. It's not what the club has kind of been built on over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
He knows where the net is, obviously, but he's got a reputation for being sent off, shall we say.
Yeah.
And you can't have somebody, when you're in a relegation dogfight, even if he scores, then gets sent off, you got a 3-game ban. Then he scores again, gets another ban. He's too easy to get wound up. In Scotland, whereby it's only really Celtic who have offered Rangers any competition, and his goal scoring record against Celtic is not very good. I think he hadn't scored until a recent game in the 13-14 games. He never scored against Celtic. I think the step up from Scottish football is going to be quite intense, especially near the bottom of the league, especially with Villa, whereby we haven't had a centre forward who's banging them in. this season.
Yeah.
So there's going to be instant expectation. If he goes in a team ahead of Wesley, who you'd assume he would do, got to hit the ground running. And I'm not convinced about him temperamentally. If we were mid-table, might be worth the punt. And I suppose if it's a cheap fee, maybe. But I think Rangers aren't going to sell for anything less than 15 million. You would have thought. I think it's too big a risk.
I'd have him. I know it contradicts the Premier League experience. Yes, he's a bit of a hothead, but if you can control that and you're getting him to put pressure on teams, he's that sort of quick getaway striker who will score goals. He's scored goals for Rangers in the Europa League, which is a big stage, and he's done it at big clubs like at Porto. I'm sure he scored at. I would imagine that he would potentially do best up alongside Wesley in a 5-3-2. You get some wing backs in who can put the ball into Wesley, hold it up, flick it on, Morales runs onto it, bang. If he could come in and do a Darren Bent or do a Milan Baros who wasn't bothered about playing against anybody unless it was a local derby or Everton, and then he'd score goals. If he can come in and do that, I'd take him. And then the other one, another player who's been linked for a while, 11 Premier League goals last season. We touched upon him earlier this season. Didn't touch him, touched upon him. Mitrovic.
I'll take him. I think he's a much better version of Morales.
I don't particularly rate Mitrovic, but he does have that Premier League experience. He's scoring goals. If you want a bully up front who will batter the back line and get onto the end of some crosses, even though we never cross the ball, he'll get the goals that we need, hopefully, to stay up. And then if he wants to leave after that, you say thanks very much, but you've added another 10 million onto your price tag anyway.
Yeah, I suppose some of the signings that we talked about could potentially predispose to another discussion about whether you change formation, whether you go 3-5-2.
I think the 5-3-2, 3-5-2 is the best option at the moment, especially if you've got Target as your wing back and Gilbert, getting them forward, getting them putting crosses in, because Target's much better going forward. You have 3 at the back, Chester, Engels or Konsa and Mings, 2 in midfield, Douglas Luiz and Harahan at the current squad, and Grealish behind Wesley and another striker, Mitrovic, Kodja, Morales, not Davis because they're too alike, maybe even El Ghazi up front. Yeah, you might see an upturning fortune.
I suppose we'll find out whether Dean Smith has been doing some alternative Football Manager style where you got 3 formations in the training ground at the same time and increase that familiarity. But I think it'd be good to have a backup, and that's obviously going to affect our transfer strategy moving forward.
I mean, so we've had that quick fire round, which the links wasn't meant to be, but you know, it's turned out all right there. Last but not least, a bit of a fantasy round now. We've all played Football Manager. I know that I've missed many a day at school when I was younger and played Football Manager. I'll even play it on my phone now on the walk into work. We all think that we can do better than the real thing. I know that you played Football Manager and you probably got Rushden and Diamonds promoted and won the Champions League and Serie A with them somehow.
Yeah, it takes about 8 weeks.
You're quite good.
Yeah, it takes about 8 weeks to play a pre-season friendly now.
Wow.
So I haven't played it for a few years.
So here you go. Bit of a fancy. You're the Football Manager. You're Dean Smith, and the chairman and Purslow come to you and have said, right, it's up to you this window. You can bring 5 players in, 3 permanent, 2 on loan, but you've got to get rid of 3 players. I mean, you can see who I've written down, so try not to give that away at the moment. Who are the players that you bring in and who do you sell?
I suppose not to give away some of your picks. I'll go in terms of position and then we can see if any of those match. But I think, touched upon it earlier, we need a left back.
Yep.
We need a centre forward.
Yep.
Defensive midfielder. I think we need another one.
Okay.
In terms of if Louise is playing there, we need another one.
Okay.
In terms of who I'd bring in on loan, I think you're looking in terms of players who you've got positions whereby young players are hopefully going to step up to the plate, and so you don't want to bring someone in permanently on big money to kind of stifle the growth, as it were. So players on loan, I think we need a winger, left or right.
Yeah.
And I mentioned earlier maybe getting a left back in on loan. Left back or right back, maybe right back, I think. Somebody who can cover. I mean, you don't really get very many of them nowadays, people who can play both.
No, Gilbert's one of them. Gilbert's one of them, to be fair to him. But any names in particular?
I think in terms of centre forward, we talked about some of the names. If we can get Mitrovic, I'd bring Mitrovic. I think he's the closest that a team in Villa's position can get to guaranteed goals.
Yeah.
Guaranteed nothing. Bowen slightly contradicts in terms of he's not the winger I bring in on loan, but if we get the opportunity. And then I think it's really going to be digging out the black book of the agents to see kind of who's kind of available. I mean, left field choice, maybe Fuchs on loan.
Yeah. He's not doing anything at Leicester, is he, at the moment?
No, he plays the odd game and he's got experience and solid. He'd fill a hole at left back, I think.
League title and relegation battle experience.
Yeah.
So who are the three that you're saying, I'm really sorry, I need to make up some funds, I've got to sell you?
I think it's not really a situation whereby anyone out there starting 11 who's established, you're going to go, sorry, you're not good enough, got to get out. We've kind of got periphery kind of players. Players, I suppose, who've only been in the club for a short period of time aren't necessarily going to be top of the block. I mean, I suppose sums up by El Ghazi, really. I mean, in terms of he's up and down, but then scores in the playoff final.
Yeah.
You're getting a good game. You're not going to give up on him kind of straight away. If he'd been there for 2.5 years and was playing the way he did, I'd get rid of him, but still too early. And that's a situation, if you bring in, like, how many players we brought in, like, a whole new team?
12, yeah.
So you are kind of left with a lot of obvious names, really. And I anticipate we're probably coming up with a similar list, really. I mean, in terms of, we've got 4 goalies, haven't we?
We got 4 goalies. Steer, of course, being out injured. Got Sarkic as well, who's having a blinder up in Scotland. Kept a clean sheet against Celtic, didn't they? When his team, is it Livingston, beat them 1-0 earlier this season. I think it's his proper league debut.
So it's almost by default you get rid of one of the goalies. I'll leave you to pick one. I think we'll agree.
Okay.
Then the talk has been about Kodja, whether you get rid of him. I mean, that depends on the Smith fancied him.
Mm-hmm.
For earlier reasons, I'd keep him because give him half a season. We've got nothing to lose.
Yeah.
If we end up staying up, we're going to upgrade in terms of quality anyway. If we do stay up, he will have contributed to that, hopefully. If we go down, he would have contributed nothing anyway.
Yeah.
Then, centre midfield, we need some upgrades in there, really. And shock horror, I've never really rated him. I'd get rid of Lansbury.
Yeah, no.
But then there's not a lot of players in that squad who you're going to be getting a lot of money for. So it's kind of like a small change, really to cobble the loan fee for a couple of players, I'd suggest.
Okay, I mean, for me, Kalinic, might as well get rid of him. He's not going to get a look in. You might get 3 or 4 million for him. International goalkeeper if he's still playing for Croatia. I've got Lansbury on my list because he's just not cutting it in the Premier League, and I know that Smith rates him and thinks that he could play that number 10 role, but he's not going to push Jack Grealish out of the way. And he's just not making the most of his opportunities. He's playing well in cup games against littler teams or kiddie teams, but he's not really doing it enough. And then the other one, it would be end of the season, end of the window, but Jonathan Kodja, and it would have to be with bringing in another striker, and hopefully you get 1 million or 2 for Kodja. Now, in regards to bringing players in, and it could very well be completely wrong here and delusional, But as an Aston Villa fan, I like to think that our name can attract players from teams that are around by us or that want to get game time because they think, you know what, they are a good team. I can improve there. Something will happen if I join them. I think we've got a bit of pull about ourselves still, especially with Smith as manager and the way that we have played, and with people like Grealish and Mings getting England recognition, even if they haven't both actually played for England yet. But start off on loan, someone to help the midfield out. He's only on loan until January, I think, anyway, at his current club, Danny Drinkwater.
An interesting one, Drinkwater. I mean, he's had some off the field issues, shall we say, and we'll leave it at that. Whether he has the hunger to get involved in a relegation battle from a situation whereby he won the league with Leicester, played for Chelsea, didn't really work out particularly. He's at Burnley, in and out of the team, not a player who you're probably saying is the driving force behind any success they've had this season. No. Danny Drinkwater a couple of years ago, yeah.
I think if you can get him back and playing to what he's capable of, him with Harahan or Douglas Luiz in that centre is a good central midfield there for you to drive that team forward. He pops up with the off goal. He's also one of those old Man United academy players. Him, Chester, Heaton, all know each other. Hopefully, they recapture that drive and ambition, which you'd hope that players would have anyway. Another one, and I would have put down Callum Wilson, but I really don't think we'd get him. Not at present anyway.
No, I don't think so.
Andre Gray at Watford. I think in the right team, like when he was at Burnley, with the right supply, Jack Grealish, Conor Harahan on form, he gets goals. I think he'd bag a goal or two, and even playing up front with Wesley, he'd bag a goal or two.
He's hot and cold.
He is. But I'd take him if he got 8 goals for us between now and the end of the season.
If he gets 8 goals, we'll stay up.
Yeah. Apart from that, wingers, you're right. I put Snodgrass down as one, but now that Moyes is back, I think he'll start getting a look in at West Ham again. Yeah. So my second loan player, it's a big one, and he probably wouldn't join, Damari Gray.
If we could get him, then yeah, I'd definitely take him.
He's never lived up to his potential, has he, at Leicester? He's a good player. He scored against West Ham the other day, so maybe he's going to get more of a look in. And then the other player, also from Leicester, I think would jump at the chance of coming back to us, Mark Albrighton. If you're going to play wingers or you're going to play wing backs, Mark Albrighton, with his crossing ability, his running ability, and his passion for the club, for 4 or 5 million, something like that, wouldn't be a bad shout, really. And lastly, if you have got Albrighton in, putting crosses in, you want a man like Mitrovic in the centre who's going to be fighting tooth and nail to get onto the end of all of those balls.
Yeah, I mean, there is very few players in the Premier League who are as good as Albrighton. Even at Villa, he showed his crossing ability. Mitrovic, as you said, is great getting on the end of them. If we are going to slightly tweak the tactical style, then those two would fit quite well. And I can't believe I forgot him when we were talking about players I'd get in or get out. But if we do get a left back in, Neil Taylor, I'll drive him to the border myself.
I don't mind Neil Taylor. I think he's had a few good games for us, but yeah, we can improve on it. I mean, if I can bring in those players, then I'm changing tactics to a 5 at the back. If I can only bring in one of the strikers, I'll bring in Mitrovic. Okay, so with Mitrovic, and I'm going 4-2-3-1. I'm then looking at Heaton, Gilbert, Chester, Mings, and House as my defence. Drinkwater and either Douglas Luiz or Harahan as my 2 central midfielders, or Nakamba. Doesn't matter really, maybe Nakamba. Then you've got Albrighton, Grealish and Damari Gray behind Mitrovic.
That's a pretty tasty front four.
Yeah, and I think you've got enough there to stay up.
Bit of a cracked it. There you go. Only took an hour. We've saved Villa's season.
There you go, Dino. Give us a call if you want to. More than happy to meet up. Come down to the training ground. Put the players through the paces. Tell them who's potentially coming to take their position. So that, wind them up a little bit. Let's have a laughing and joke with them. Tell them that Mitrovic is like in the changing rooms, ready to have them. But, don't scare them too much, obviously. Well, nice one. Hopefully, when we next meet up, we're talking about some positive results from those 3 games. We might meet up before those 3 games if we're able to, or Baz may do a recording on his own about reviews, a quick one I might do if I get the chance to. Otherwise, we'll see you after those 3. We'll look ahead, and if you've got any topics that you'd like us to touch upon, please let us know. But we'll try and think of a few other things to talk about as well. Maybe something for next time. If you could bring back any player that you've seen play for Villa, one player, and put them into the team now in their prime, who would it be and why? Don't spoil it. Don't spoil it. But who would it be and why?
Good one to ponder. I will slightly spoil it by saying it won't be Neil Hampton.
Well. Don't tune in if you're a Neil Hampton fan. Anyway, cheers, Tar. Thank you very much. Up the Villa.